Welcome back! In this series, learn how to install and configure Cubo in just a few minutes and empower your team with automated insights. In the previous segment, we looked at the basic attributes configuration of an entity. In this video, we will talk about a related concept, path of foreign key attributes. Let's enable edit mode of the logical data model. Oftentimes, you need to bring in attributes from other related entities into a primary entity, like customer or transactions. For instance, we might want to bring in attributes from the customer info to the customer, say primary interest, and we want to add it into the customer entity. Similarly, we want to add continent from the country entity into the customer entity. All of this is enabled by path of foreign key attributes capability in the product. Let's try to configure a few of them. Let's understand how to bring the primary interest attribute into the customer entity. Add an attribute called primary interest with type string. Click on the plus sign here to add attributes. Add all the details like the attribute source, which in this case is customer info. Specify the column. And now we need to add the path of foreign key relation to understand how the customer table is related to the customer info table. Let's add a relation to the customer info table. Although it says path is completed, we need to specify the relationship. Here, customer ID is equal to customer_info ID. Click on Add, and the relation is established. Now we have the primary interest attribute from the customer entity being fetched from the customer info table. Similarly, we can set up an association to fetch the continent attribute. Let's add continent as an attribute with type string. Add the details for attribute source, country table in this case. Specify the path of foreign key relation with the country table, the country name. Click on Add, and the relation is established. In certain cases, if the column is not a primary key or is not defined as the unique value key, you can disable the reference column's key validation. This is covered in detail in our documentation linked below. Let's use this capability for specifying a primary key attribute for the transaction entity. Let's add the primary interest attribute to the transaction entity. Specify the type as string. In some cases, the path of foreign key relation goes through multiple tables. Add the attribute source, customer info table with the column primary interest, and add the relation. The first relationship is between transaction and the customer. Let's go ahead and specify the relation. Here, the transaction customer ID equals customer ID. Add that and select another table to associate customer to customer info. Select customer ID, which equals customer info ID. And the path is completed. Don't forget to save this draft before you activate it. Click on Reload, and let's take a quick look at the impact of all the changes that we've made so far. Let's sign in. Click on our personal channel and ask the same question in the customer thread, Customers. As opposed to the previous results, we now see the customer's primary interest and continent as well. You can now ask questions like customers in Asia, where you can filter customers by continents. Let's ask the total number of transactions by primary interest. And here you go! Now we're able to see our transactions that are refined by the primary interest. That was the path of foreign key attributes segment. In the next segment, we will cover another concept of attributes called the derived attributes. Until then, stay tuned.